Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cutting through all the online noise to look at the fascinating, real science behind how different exercises actually shape the human body. Specifically, we're focusing on the glutes. We constantly see this one single idealized image of fitness on our feeds, but the truth? Human anatomy is incredibly dynamic. So today, we're going to look at the actual data and biomechanics to see exactly how different movements act like completely different chisels on the human form.
All right, let's just dive right into it and bust a massive myth right out of the gate. Does hitting the squat rack automatically guarantee you a huge, peachy result? So many people believe that just training glutes leads to one universal, guaranteed outcome. But as we're going to see in the science today, that assumption is just fundamentally flawed. There is no one-size-fits-all here.
So, here is our blueprint for today. We're going to start with the art of sculpting, move into power and explosive glutes, check out control and fluid lines, look at endurance and balance shapes, and finish up with a much-needed genetic reality check.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the art of sculpting. It's time to really understand your physiological canvas.
Before we even pick up the chisel, we absolutely have to know our clay. The glutes aren't just one big, simple muscle. They're a really complex group of three distinct muscles. You've got the gluteus maximus. That's the biggest one, driving major power. The gluteus medius, which sits a bit higher up on the sides to handle stabilization, and then the deep gluteus minimus tucked underneath it all. And what's absolutely vital to grasp here is that these three muscles respond entirely differently depending on the exact type of stimulation you hit them with.
So, the real game changer is this. Exercise doesn't just indiscriminately pack on mass, it acts way more like a highly specific sculptor. When you train, you're actually creating distinct visual styles over time based entirely on what you ask your body to do. You aren't just building a shape, you're forcing your muscles to adapt to a specific function, and that function totally dictates the final form.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, power and explosive glutes. Think of this as your high-intensity chisel.
If we look at traditional strength training, we're talking heavy squats, hip thrusts, deadlifts, those brutal Bulgarian split squats. This is where you see the most dramatic volume increase. Why is that? Well, because these exercises specifically target the gluteus maximus under heavy progressive loads. You're literally forcing the muscle fibers to grow larger to handle that heavy weight. The hip thrust, for example, creates a very distinct backward projection. The visual outcome here is that highly recognizable fitness influencer look. It's full, highly lifted, with a super clear 3D separation between the glute and the hamstring.
But hey, what if we completely flip the script and change the stimulus? If we pivot to sprinting, high-intensity interval training, or explosive box jumps, we're suddenly asking the body for high-frequency explosive power. This totally changes the game by preferentially activating your fast-twitch muscle fibers, especially in the upper portion of the glutes. Plus, since sprinting demands a low body fat percentage for maximum speed, the visual outcome is a totally different style. It's lifted, sure, but it's not huge. It's tight, small, extremely hard, and highly elastic. Essentially, the classic lean track athlete aesthetic.
And seeing them side by side brilliantly illustrates the contrast. Look at this. Both represent elite fitness, but the functional demand dictates the visual outcome. Heavy weights and resistance build that projecting volume and maximum fullness. Meanwhile, explosive speed and impact build tight, elastic density with incredibly clean lines. You are literally molding the muscle to either lift a massive boulder or fire off the starting blocks. All right, let's completely shift gears for Section 3, control and fluid lines. Low weight, high precision.
Through low weight and exceptionally high control, disciplines like Pilates, yoga, and bar ask something entirely different of the body. Here, the focus isn't on moving max weight or max speed at all. It's all about hyperfocus, deep stabilizer activation, and perfecting pelvic posture. Because you aren't applying heavy resistance, you just don't trigger that same volume-building hypertrophy. Instead, you're refining the muscle. The result is a petite, sleek aesthetic with smooth, natural transitions from the hip to the leg, but a lot of people call the elongated dancer look. It's elegant, highly functional, and prioritizes perfect alignment over size.
Which brings us to Section 4, endurance and balanced shapes. This is all about sustained effort and systemic synergy. What's absolutely fascinating here is how long-duration endurance fundamentally alters the muscle's visual output.
Take a look at this breakdown. It perfectly captures how systemic synergy works. Let's look at cycling. A cyclist develops incredibly powerful quads and outer hips because of the repetitive pedal stroke, right? But because sitting on a bike actually limits full hip extension, they end up developing far less backward projection than a weightlifter. Moving down to distance running. The demand here is sustained high-calorie endurance. Your body literally resists building heavy muscle volume because carrying extra mass for 20 miles requires way too much oxygen. So runners stay super light, often with a much flatter shape. And finally, swimming. It requires full body stabilization in a totally weightless environment. The result is proportionate, balanced, and rounded, but never locally explosive. The body adapts precisely to the environment it's in.
Okay, let's hit our final section. Section 5, the genetic reality check. Honestly, this is the ignored key to all our physical expectations.
We have to absolutely shatter this illusion right now. The fitness industry loves to sell the idea that if you just buy the right program, you're going to look exactly like the model on the cover. But the undeniable truth is, training does not guarantee one specific look, because we are not all starting with the same raw stone. Ignoring this fact just means you're ignoring the fundamental biological boundaries of the human body.
I mean, just look at this list of things you absolutely cannot change in the gym. Your pelvic tilt, whether your pelvis naturally tilts forward or backward, massively dictates how your glutes look from a side profile before you even do a single squat. Your hip width and your femur length dictate your overall proportions. And crucially, get this, your muscle attachment points. You simply cannot change where your muscles physically attach to your skeleton. These factors set your structural baseline in stone before you ever lift a single weight.
And because of those unchangeable genetics, the real world yields this wild spectrum of results. You've got the natural responder, someone whose muscle attachments and bone structure are perfectly aligned for that 3D volume, meaning just a little bit of training yields massive results. Then you've got the hard worker. This is someone who puts in immense effort, lifts heavy, eats flawlessly, and achieves a beautifully tight athletic shape, but because of their natural bone structure, they'll simply never grow massive volume. And of course, there's the natural round, folks who are just born with a specific shape regardless of how they train. All three of these outcomes represent amazing, incredibly healthy bodies. They are just different expressions of human biology.
So I want to wrap up this explainer with a really empowering thought. Stop fighting your foundation. As this quote just beautifully puts it, your exercise determines your style, but your genetics determine your upper limit and foundation. You are the artist, and your workouts are your tools. But your DNA, that built the canvas. So knowing the incredible, entirely unique anatomy you've been given, which masterpiece are you going to sculpt today?